The News from Lake Wobegon podcast is supported by Cheerios. As part of a heart-healthy diet, the oats in Cheerios can help naturally lower cholesterol. Cheerios, good for the heart.
Well, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, my hometown, out on the prairie. It's been beautiful weather. It's been sunny and perfect and absolutely paradise. The gardens are flourishing, all the tomatoes and the sweet corn, and people are as happy as they can be considering who we are and our background. The Lake Wobegon Whippets lost this last weekend to the Uppsala Uftas. It's the top of the ninth inning. The Uftas came up. They had the bases loaded. They had 2 outs. Long fly ball hit out to deep left center field. You could see it happening far away. The 2 outfielders, Ronnie in center field and Fred in left, converging, running full tilt towards each other, both of them looking up into the sky. You shuddered and you heard the terrible crack of 2 heads banging against each other. The umpire ran out there. When he got out there, he found the ball was in Ronnie's right pants pocket. He called the batter out. The Uftas protested. They claimed he'd trapped the ball. Fred was unconscious. It's not that it was a crucial play or anything. The Uftas were leading 16-3. It left a bad taste in people's mouths. The terrible crack of those 2 heads coming together. They went down to the sidetrack tap afterward, all of the Whippets, and Fred had a beer. He sat on a stool looking at Wally, and suddenly things came back to him that he couldn't remember until just now. He remembered a whole passage from the first epistle to the Corinthians about faith and hope and love, and he remembered all of the words to "Today I started loving her again." And he had another beer, and he started to remember more and more things. And he got gloomy. His friends tried to cheer him up. They said, "Look, you practically own this pickup truck and that camper. They're practically new. You've got a good job. I mean, they're not laying off people in the cesspool pumping business now, are they? And so you got work." And the more his friends tried to cheer him up, the more depressed he felt. Until finally he stalked out of the bar with a beer bottle in his hand. He walked down the street. He saw his camper sitting there. He threw it at the rear window. Gary and Leroy were called. There were sirens. There was shouting. He tried to run. They had to get him. It was a whole big turmoil. And the next day, people asked Wally what happened. He said, "Well, it all started with a long fly ball, I'll tell you." No, all of us in the Midwest, we have these long memories, sad memories, so much grief and sorrow and pain and suffering, because winter is so long here, you see. We've gone through all of this neglect and misunderstanding and this coldness, and we've gone through bad casseroles, and we've gone through terrible jellos and butterscotch puddings, and we try to compensate for it, you see, when it gets warm, by subjecting ourselves to mindless pleasure in the summertime and to experience sun and sand and wind and grass and wine and dance and song. But we weren't brought up to experience mindless pleasure. It's like trying to write on glass with a pencil. It just doesn't make an impression on us. You see, we're Lutherans. All of us are Lutherans. Even Catholics up here are Lutherans. Sunshine makes us gloomy, and I hate to generalize about people, and yet it is true of every single Lutheran without a single exception that the low point of their entire year is their summer vacation. We know this. Lutherans are brought up not to express personal preference, you see, and to have 2 people discussing where to go on a summer vacation who are saying, "Well, that's fine with me. Whatever you want, whatever you want. You want to go there, that's fine. I don't care." either way with me, makes no difference, can drive a person crazy. And so oftentimes, the Lutheran couple winds up going to the place that neither of them wants to go at all. That's a Lutheran compromise. If one person wants to go to California and the other person wants to go to Vermont, the compromise would be to go to the Happy Bison Motel in Bismarck, North Dakota. So the Lutheran woman is dreading weeks in advance all of the horrific things that can happen to her out there. Psychotic hitchhikers. You could have a terrible motel and a berserk motel owner, the shower stall, all of that stuff. And they're dreading this, and they wind up at the Happy Bison Motel. It's sitting out there in the midst of thousands of acres of parched grassland. It's a motel that looks like a warehouse. There's not a tree in sight. It's surrounded by about 40 acres of asphalt. There's a little plastic wading pool and a jungle gym. And there's a bar, a cocktail lounge with a poker machine, and there's a blues band called the Hitchhikers, which you can hear from anywhere in the motel until 3 o'clock in the morning. And the semi-trucks are going by at 100 miles an hour all night, and you lie in your bed and the air conditioner sounds like a power lathe. Your terrified children come in and sleep with you in the bed with you and your wife, little sweaty, panicky children. You lie there, you sleep, you dream of hundreds of different forms of death and torture. And at 6 o'clock one morning, your sister-in-law calls. She has gone to check on your home and found the back door unlocked and found a half-eaten cheese sandwich sitting on the kitchen table, and should she call the police? That is a Lutheran compromise vacation, the sort of vacation that you come back from vowing to be a better person in the future. Pleasure has nothing to do with it. So. The Inkvists, Pastor David and Judy Inkvist, are going up to her family's cabin up on Lake Tremolo, which is up near Bemidji, Minnesota. They were supposed to go for 5 weeks, but they could only get Pastor Eckerholm to fill in the pulpit for the first 3 weeks of August, so David will have to come back and preach the last 2 Sundays. Pastor Eckerholm is in some kind of outreach program in Minneapolis. I don't know what they're reaching for, but he manages this outreach program, and he's busy, and so he only has 3 sermons in his repertoire. That's all he can do. He has one on stewardship, and he has one entitled, "Touch Not the Unclean Thing." And he has one on faith, which actually is a lot of stories about golf. So David and Judy will be going up to the old family cabin, which they were supposed to have all to themselves, but plans changed, and her brother Jack and his wife Cassandra are now going to join them. 2 boring, unhappy people. Her mother called and said, "Please, won't you let Jack and Cassandra come up and be at the cabin at the same time you're going to be there?" They've been going through an awful lot lately with Jack's drinking, and they really need help. And Cassandra adores David and would listen to anything he says, and she's the one who wants the divorce. So that's their vacation. Ralph is the one who has a good summer vacation planned. He's going up to Canada. He's going to get on the train out of Winnipeg, going up north, that little train that goes bumping along through the pine woods up towards Churchill Bay. A little 4-coach baggage car. Ralph is going to go about halfway up to Churchill Bay to a little lake called Resurrection Lake. It's the most beautiful fishing lake in the north. You take 3 big backpacks, and one of the backpacks is filled with 10 gallons of detergent, dishwashing detergent. The bugs up there are fierce on this lake. Gigantic deer flies the size of my thumb. Bugs that bug repellent has no effect on whatsoever. Crucifixes help a little bit, but You have to hit them really hard with them. These bugs are fierce, mosquitoes and all. These are bugs that'll take a chunk out of you and leave marks on you like people used to get from smallpox. But it's the most beautiful fishing lake. You go up there and you strip down to nothing and you wade into the water up to your armpits and you cast for trout from there. And the trout snap instantly. Fishing takes 5 minutes a day and you've got all that you can eat. Beautiful, beautiful big trout. You catch them. You stand in the water up to your armpits and you have an inner tube there with your bucket on it, but you can throw any kind of bait in whatsoever. You can throw in bacon, you can throw in an old Reader's Digest, one of your socks. These trout just snap up at anything. And meanwhile, the bugs are diving at you from all directions. And down under the water, these beautiful trout are nibbling at your body and eating the dead skin off your body. It's the most beautiful, sensual experience to have 50 fish nibbling on your naked body as you're casting for them, and big blue flies and deer flies and horse flies and mosquitoes are on you. You don't know where you are on the food chain, somewhere where you fit in. But the trout are so tasty, they feed on the bugs, and the bugs feed on you, and you eat the fish. You cook the fish out in the lake. You take that inner tube, and you put boards across it, and you put sand on top of it, and then you build your fire on that. You stand out in the lake up to your armpits, and you cook up over your head. And it's the most wonderful fish. Wonderful, wonderful fish you've ever had. You stand out there and you drink a little whiskey and you eat your trout. And after a week, you've had the worst and the best time that you've had all year. It's the sort of vacation that's good for us Lutherans. You come home from a week on Resurrection Lake up in Canada, and nothing that happens to you the rest of the year will seem that bad. That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good-looking, and all the children are above average.
The News from Lake Wobegon podcast is supported by Cheerios. As part of a heart-healthy diet, the oats in Cheerios can help naturally lower cholesterol. Cheerios, good for the heart.